There we go. So the recording has started. And welcome to the Guild meeting for Outreach and Network. And we are recording for people who can't be here. The goal tonight is really just to give us a moment to share what it is about this guild that is most interesting to us, and to go over the driver statement and to start to brainstorm a little bit through a gathering considerations process what the focus and priorities need to be. And we'll post this video and also the link to, let me post the link to the driver statement. And we'll also post that with the YouTube. And there. So just get started. Once around, what is it about outreach and network that has you interested? And anyone can start, and there's only the three, so it makes a really easy circle. So anyone start and then pass it to somebody, and that will be our circle.
I can start. Well, there's a few things. One of them is I've been holding a lot of this over the last year or so. And I've transitioned from being a farmer caretaker on site to being more of a lifeboat mentor / guild member off site. So I'm curious how I can continue to promote what the Lifeboat Academy is doing for people, partly people who are like me who are building lifeboats elsewhere, but also to get people involved potentially on the farm. And I'm also interested in possibly a more in-depth sort of aim, act, reflect process around what our outreach has been up until this point, and what kinds of things do we maybe want to change or try moving forward now that it seems like the Lifeboat Academy is probably a go. So yeah, I have lots of different ideas and considerations. Over to April.
Thanks, Ronnie. I think outreach is critical to the whole system and adds to the flow through the organism. Making sure that the outreach approaches reflect what we think are the most effective ways of doing things overall with humans and whoever and whatever else is in the picture with us is an interest of mine. I'm also very interested in network development. So, of course, this would call to me. I am possibly more interested in two other guilds, which are the one we've just had a meeting about, and
Principles and governance.
Yeah, and heartwork and philosophy. Really, I need to explore the interrelations of all of them to see what the fit can be and where I can contribute most fruitfully, I suppose. And I don't expect to be able to be doing practical work in all three guilds necessarily, but I really feel the need to understand the relationships, I guess, amongst them, and then how we tune those relationships or pay attention to them in a way that supports everything else. And over to Ben.
Yeah, I think the aspects I'm very curious about two parts, maybe three. One is how do we form a cosmolocal organization? How do we actually have, I think there's a really big potential for a way of organizing that is not virtual only. And how does that change things? You know, and in particular, there's kind of a practicality. I'm hoping that the place-basedness of it tempers everything with a sort of practicality and keeps it from spinning off into a big talk and or disembodied talk, you know. And so that's kind of one aspect of the networking, you know, how can we, what's it look like to have a cosmolocal connection? And the second part is very similar, which is how do we have a different intelligence? How do we have a different access to the intelligence in our networks? I personally feel like the way that we are going about doing it, building, you know, repository websites and expecting people to search for things or inventing more and more and more different organizations, it's just not effective. And with the rise of AI everywhere all the time, I am still more curious about HI, you know, human intelligence, and especially what are the possibilities of leaning into networked human intelligence that actually is people to people, not mediated through a website or some sort of repository. And I have great hope and no plan for exactly how that works. But that's why I'm interested in this guild. You know, it's a little bit the outreach, because I do think that there's something about the making the flow of energy, you know, bringing energy into the anchor of the lifeboat network. But I'm especially interested in that. How do we tap into intelligence, like practical, actionable intelligence when you need help? So that's for me. All right, well, let's go over to the driver statement. And we've got 9 people who are interested in this guild, which is really good. And one of the things that I mentioned in a couple of the other guilds, we have a number of people who are specifically interested. We also have a number of people on our lists who I think haven't expressed specific interest, but could be interested, and could be engaged as we go forward. So I think part of the work of each guild is also thinking about how to do some of their own outreach. And actually that might be a function that the outreach guild helps other guilds with, connecting people into the guilds. So in terms of our organism metaphor, this guild is the tentacles, and I added mycelia. Mycelia have that really great ability of passing resources along the web. And so how do we help reach out from the Lifeboat Academy to find and develop new relationships and manage connections with other lifeboats and between communities? So really kind of working at that level of community to community work, and but also, you know, developing and strengthening partnerships and relationships. And so the long-term goals, most of these are shared with other guilds at the same time. So reaching out to bring people onto the farm to actually come to the physical campus is, you know, one of the long-term goals that obviously there's some role for outreach in that. And we have a goal of both establishing something like a land-back relationship with the Wisanic, and as a community to community aspect, that's why that landed in this guild. whatever that relationship might look like. And it could be that it morphs somewhat, you know, that it goes beyond outreach. And likewise, we have some goals of having First Nations led activities physically on the farm. It could actually, now that I'm saying it out loud, there's no reason why it would have to be physical. There could be all sorts of opportunities for Indigenous led activities, if in any way we can be supportive in that. So really, I think that having those activities on the farm, we were seeing as a service to the settler community, and trying to figure out how we can develop a relationship where that makes sense for the First Nations. And then in terms of the short-term goals, we just have outreach, and right now there's just a generic outreach to a long list of potential people, and with some goal of, you know, increasing that number. And then we also had allyship training, which could also be elaborated more, you know, could be anyhow, I think it's a placeholder for a concept of how do we make sure that we're doing outreach in a respectful and non-oppressive, non-settler way. And then the resources that are dedicated are pretty much all social communication tools. And the interdependencies are primarily with the farm team when there's when the land is being used by outside communities or groups, kind of coordinating that relationship, that situation. And then also helping with recruiting potential investors brings us a link to finance and legal. And I populated, there are a few chores that have, you know, have been in relations, which has morphed into outreach and network. So responsible for sending out email updates and updates to social media. And also then in terms of memes, we have, or sorry, in terms of badges, I put together some badges that relate to those activities. That's pretty much it. So continuing around, we'll start with questions for clarification or improvements, changes, anything to suggest there before we go into considerations where we start to think about what's the priority focus. So Ronnie, over to you. Questions or thoughts, elaborations?
I don't have any questions, and I had just added a couple of things earlier today to the driver's statement, just some elaborations. So I don't have anything else. Over to April.
I'm just thinking about short-term goals, I think, and adding in there somehow understanding the links to the interdependencies, because I think with this guild, it should be somewhat easier, I think, to draw some lines as to what's expected amongst the guilds, and I guess under short-term goals too is an understanding of what the limits are exactly to this particular thing.
Can you say more about that?
Well, I guess, I mean, in terms of scope and reach, outreach can be the world. And do we have goals about the amount of the world that we're reaching out to? Instead of just vaguely saying anybody that clicks on the link from wherever they are in the world, whether it's Puskapay or Tasmania, can be part of this. But are there areas that we really want to cultivate? Where's the field and what's the crop? And over to Ben.
Well, and I think that gets us into consideration. So let's just roll with it. And yeah, I think yeah, and that makes me that is a good question about well, and this makes me think of Ronnie's thing. What is maybe my first consideration is let's do that. Can we do a quick reflection on what seems to be working and if anything doesn't seem to be working. And yeah, because my sense is I feel like more than not, I feel like what we're doing seems to be working. And I think it's consistency. Consistency feels like a really important part. Transparency and consistency. And maybe that's can we focus more on yeah, can we focus that more on the 20 that gets us 80, yeah. Oh, that'll be my first offer. Over to you, Ronnie.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about lifeboat builders specifically. We have a whole Facebook group with like 50 people in it. And who identified that they're interested in building lifeboats or they're already building lifeboats. But we haven't had a ton of engagement in the group and also with I feel like with our resources that we offer. So I guess one question I have is how do we make things, or one question we have had is how do we make things as accessible as possible? And we have the help desk. It's still really new. It's really like a year old, less than a year old.
Less than, yeah.
Yeah. But how do we make our materials accessible online so that people don't have to feel like they're making a big commitment to something in order to engage and get support? Like having the recorded webinars up is great. Having articles up is great. And then how do we advertise that we have that stuff available? You don't have to come to a 2-hour webinar, but here's the webinar if you want to watch it on your own time, things like that. So making people aware of what we have in a way where it doesn't feel like they're like having to take on another thing. Because the other thing I'm noticing with people who are thinking about collapse, they're involved in their local communities in various ways. They're trying to study and learn and prepare and grow food and or they're stuck in like, oh God, what do I do? Where do I start? So how do we make it feel like they're not taking on another thing, but they're actually having some kind of like release? There's a release valve, there's a pressure release from them being able to access resources and support. I feel like I'm going like really meta and weird. So I'm gonna pass to April.
So that I can be meta and weird too? No, I think you're absolutely right. And it's a different kind of outreach, what you're talking about, but equally important. And the getting people to engage with what the gold sort of that has been cultivated. Can you cultivate gold?
Mm.
The
Can, you
whatever it
can.
is, the products um that we've got, um getting people to use those actively is really important, I think. Yeah, consistency is important. The other thing that sort of is ringing a bell for me is we have the possibility of a outreach that goes quite far. And that means that we have the possibility to you know have the that reversed around those pathways that we've kind of established in the outreach, so we can ask for feedback, or we can ask for something from these folks that we have. We have the potential to get a lot of informed opinions, probably, on what it is that we're doing, on whatever. I mean, it would be really interesting to have simple surveys with folks, asking them things like, what's the most exciting thing that's happened in the last 3 months to you in regard to this stuff, and whatever. Because that just it knits the networks together better, and the social fabric starts to emerge from that, I think. Wow. So I've got metaphors about mining, I've got metaphors about growing stuff, and now I've got metaphors about knitting. It's the time of day. Sorry, everybody. On to bed.
Well, and I think, I feel like we are in a time of inversion, right? And so there is something about whatever our knee-jerk reaction idea is, flip that around.
Mhm.
And I do think that there's something about, I've been seeing a bunch of memes recently that have been mostly about spiritual work, but they are along the theme of everyone's interested in inspiration, but not integration. And I feel like that's a lot of what we're talking about, where so there's a couple factors here. One of the topics that I wanted to propose for the Friday circle was about the post-doom trajectory. And I think I think it might be an interesting maybe this is actually more a conversation for here than for the Friday group, but there are going to be some people, for April, your question about what's the scope of our reach, and I think geographically it's pretty infinite. Well, it's global, but I think there's something, first of all, I think that we are probably appealing to a particular cultural group. I don't think we're probably not appealing to the global South, and that's, that first of all, I can only function effectively in English, and so we have language limits. Um, and and also I think perspective differences. But the point I'm trying to make is, I think it's a much more limited market, because it's people that are at a place where they're ready to start doing something. And I think that there will be lots of people who are kind of shopping around, and I'm not particularly interested in them. But I think it's actually, like, Ronnie, the pressure release valve, like, that makes me think what we want, I guess, yeah, we've got somebody coming to join us. And I think that why, hello.
Hi.
We're just gathering considerations, and so you can see some of the conversation that we've had so far. And I will repost the link just so you have it, so you can come into the document as well. Oh, shoot. I'm going to stop my share for a second to do it. I don't know why it came out bold. Anyhow, the point that I was trying to make was I think that if we could have like a red button that says, you know, pressure release valve, hit here. Like that's actually where I want to be. When people are thinking there's too much, I'm overwhelmed, I don't know what's going on. That's when we have tools that we can actually offer that make sense. So how, you know, it's not like it's how do we design that button? Um, and Sandra, do you want to take a moment to come into the circle or?
Sure. And apology for arriving late after missing the one I wanted to attend yesterday. Animal feeding time, hard deadline for my dissertation this evening. And I'm just struggling to manage my time. So I apologize, but I thought, well, at least I'll show up and to show that I want to be here. And this is about, the networking and creating a larger sense of community and connection. And I have some of these questions too. If I'm not there living on that property, how do I participate? And in what sense? I've been exploring, opportunities and options to live on the land, what that relationship might look like. Sorry. I have a dog barking at me. Because after they eat, they want to go out and they want this and they want that.
Yeah.
So I don't have a particular, sorry, I have to pause because the dog won't stop barking. I don't know if you can hear her or not. I have to.
Okay. Ronnie, over to you.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the pressure release valve and sort of and also like how do we differentiate ourselves from all these, the deep adaptation Facebook group and all of these people who say they know all this stuff and blah blah blah. And I'm wondering about really leaning into the lifeboat mentor thing. And it's like someone reaches out, they get a meeting with someone from the Lifeboat Academy. They get a one-on-one. They get a personal time to like that's for me when I think what's the pressure release, it's like talking to someone, like getting stuff off my chest, venting, exploring ideas, talking to someone who gets it, and then having the lifeboat mentor be like, well, here's what I'm hearing. Here are some tools that I think might be helpful for you. And because even, going to the help desk could be really overwhelming if you're like, I know collapse is happening, I'm really scared. Oh, there's all these articles, but I'm, oh God. It's like, oh, here, I can just talk to someone. And we've already done that. Like we've already been doing that, having one of those one-on-ones with people who have different projects, who are, want to chat. So I think that's a relational piece of building the network. And so it's that balance between having our online presence, having materials available, and still being HI, human intelligence, at the end of the day. Over to April.
We're talking social innovation here, to use a term that I know lots of people are using, but I've just realized I'm actually one of those innovators, and I never realized that's what I was doing for years. So figuring out all all the stuff that we talked about actually in our last meeting, and figuring out the engagement that is special that Ronnie's just been talking about, that this system offers, and figuring out how to do it in a way that mobilizes the multiple intelligences that humans come with, not just overall human intelligence, but I'm a proponent of Howard Gardner and multiple intelligences that don't get used very well in our world. And we have a chance here to use all the intelligences that people come with, and that's a very powerful thing. What was the question?
Well, it's just considerations. So ultimately, any thoughts are valid. So questions, concerns, ideas, worries, hopes.
I think what might be useful, and this sort of reflects back again to what Ronnie was talking about, is as one of our short-term goals to identify what, the sales funnel says is a unique selling proposition. So what is the proposition that we offer that is unique? And how do we express that in a way that's unique and sociocratic?
Megan, go lie down. Go lie down.
So I think, as something to be thinking about soonish for this guild, that's a reasonable thing. And now over to Ben.
Yeah, and I think you're right, Ronnie. It's and then those tools, yeah, it is I mean, there might be a question about kind of efficiency, how if it starts to develop, then how many mentors do you need for how many requests? But I think that's where, well, there's a couple different thoughts. One is the sort of the mutual aid aspect of it, where everyone is recognizing. That's also part of for me, it's not just the multiple intelligence, which I think is important, but a fluid intelligence, like enabling like, here's what I see, and use what works for you, and I know I only see this bit, like that. There's that kind of humility, and I guess actually that's part of, Ronnie, you were talking about all of these other groups that kind of say, here's the answer, here are the resources, here's how you do it, and instead being the group that says, oh, but let's figure it out, which doesn't mean that we don't know anything, but with like some significant humility, where it's like, well, how's that sound to you? And let me know if that works. I think that's the other thing too, is in terms of the AMAC reflect, give this a try, and if it doesn't work, we'll figure out something else. And if it does work, that'd be great to know. And I want it to be, I mean, I've always wanted it to be person to person, not like, I don't want this to be about big numbers. But I think that's the thing, is if you connect, it's that whole the Dunbar thing, if one person has 20 to 50 relatively tight connections, and at least most people know 50 people well enough that they know what they're about, and if we can tap into that, the math of that is really amazing. If we can just tap into maybe that's one of the multiple intelligences, is your intelligence is also who you know. So just how do we tap into, well, I don't know, but I do know my friend knows, because that would be huge. And it could be about information, it could also be about resources. Do you know somebody who has a farm? Do you know somebody who's looking for help? Yeah, that's the part of the network that gets me really excited. how do we connect people 1 and 2 people away? So over to Sandra. And thanks for taking notes.
Yeah, this is just like you guys are thinking my thoughts out loud in just different words, but I also, when you talked, Ronnie, you talk about tools and it's like, yeah, tools, articles, I have access to like abundance of that. What really interests me is the relationships. And then I thought of a model, the living library with the humans, where you get to have that meaningful conversation with another human about a specific topic. Say, oh, I just yesterday connected with Kiyomi from Young Agrarians
Oh, cool.
about their land matching program. And we had, one, 45-minute conversation about her work and then what I'm interested in doing and where there's sort of connections. And then and it was amazing, like what came out of that conversation. And so that dialogical learning, learning through dialogue, I think is really powerful. And if it would be something like a library saying, have a photo of the person and say they have this background or interested in having conversations about blah, 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 or you could set up specific times. I know we've done it at Camosun where you could go in and physically sit across from a person and ask them questions about their background, but it could be done online. I love that idea. And also I like the idea that just came up about resource sharing. So that we're not duplicating the resources we have. And if we only need it once or twice, it's just like the tool libraries, resource libraries that belong to a community so that multiple people can use them. So yeah, the tool library model, but it could go beyond that. It could be, resource tools, right?
Mhm.
Tool sharing in that sort of, oh yeah, like a library you're borrowing. So
That's back to Ronnie then.
yeah,
Yeah.
over to, is it Ronnie?
Yeah. Um, yeah, and sort of the one the question that came to mind, for lack of better words, was like, what's the pipeline? So it's like people have a one-on-one, and then we can kind of hold their hand a little bit and say, well, we have a weekly navigation session at this time. And it's really, I feel like so much of what we provide is like the problem is the solution. Like, we're not providing solutions for people to the climate crisis, but we're providing spaces where they can just explore. They can spaces where they can connect and have the conversations they need to have and connect with other people and figure things out, a step at a time. And so we can the mentors can kind of guide people through what we offer, what's available. And I like the resource sharing idea. And in the Earth Regenerators Vivero circle that I've been participating in, a couple times they had an online event in that group where each person spoke to different needs that they had based on the projects they're working on, or even just like a need in life that they had. And then people could take turns responding to different people's needs. And that was a way not only to get needs met, but to build relationships and also learn about what each other is up to, like what people do in the world, what kind of resources and money and organizations they have access to. And I think that's something that we talk about in slightly different ways, but some sort of event where people can just come together and talk about their immediate needs, I think would be really cool. And it's not a list of resources, but it's an actual, interactive space where people get to um, share together and learn from each other. Yeah, those were the two things I wanted to say. Over to April.
Thanks, Ronnie. The need nest. Some sessions with folks that allows them to nest together, talk about needs and do whatever. Just going back to the pressure relief valve or button, stop, help button, stop the world, I want help. I think that we might want to have a banner headline for all the lifeboat building activity stuff. Something says something like, let's figure it out together. And because that's what we're inviting people to do. And that's what Ben said earlier. And you can start with, the button, push here for quick release. Let's figure it out together. And that relates to something that I've thought about a lot lately, which is just the slogan, walking each other home.
Mm.
And if there's some way to incorporate the feeling of that into how we describe what it is that we do. And it doesn't matter where your home is. And it doesn't matter if we're actually walking literally with people, although sometimes we will be. But that sense of, the mutual aid, mutual benefit, mutual need to have each other. And over to Ben.
Yeah, this sounds great. And it actually, I just started doing some research on time banking or local currency, platforms. And the first one I looked at, it basically is exactly what you were describing, where there are requests and offers, I think. And, you just say, here are the kinds of things that I'm willing to offer, into the time bank. And then people take you up on it and it helps to connect. Yeah, and I like how, and I think there's also, because I've also been thinking about the faculty of the Lifeboat Academy, and this is making me think of, they're the mentors are the ones who, oh, it's chicken time. The mentors are the ones who, there's a tier here, there's the faculty, and there's maybe like the core faculty and then the mentors, and it's sort of like the faculty and grad students. So, the mentors are the grad students, and then you've got the kinds of supports that then can be offered out to, the lifeboat builders, who are then kind of the undergrads, and sometimes, maybe I'm pushing the metaphor too far, but there are different departments on campus, right? There are different schools. And so there are some people who are going to be really focused on the physical stuff, and some people on the personal transformation stuff, and some people on the community organizing stuff. And cool, it all needs to happen. It's all, and I think that's part of, us doing that relationship mapping, that asset mapping. It's like these things link together, and really that's, and it's all part of resilience, right? Material, financial, food, emotional, healing. These are all aspects of resilience and regeneration. And it's just kind of it's a mutual aid network that is also a learning network. So I think that's also part of our unique contribution, is that it's not just mutual aid, one and back and forth, here's a transaction, you get what you need, but it's actually about how do you then incorporate that and grow your capacity. So that, and how do we grow our capacity? So we're getting smarter about, the more people that come to us and say, I am freaking out because of X, then all of a sudden we're like, oh, okay, cool. We know this is something people really need. This is something we put forward. It's just what you were starting with, April, about, getting the feedback from the people, we've been reaching out into the network and now asking for some feedback to come back in to let us know what's useful, what's not, where should we focus. So yeah, I feel like this seems really exciting, and yeah, I'm not sure what we need to do to kind of wrap it up into the project for the meeting, or the product for the meeting, is that we want to be able to come up with what we're going to say on Saturday is, kind of our main focus for 2024. And it sounds like, a lot of this has been elaborating what's our value proposition, elaborating our value proposition, and then yeah, and then what? And then it sounds like it's designing the pressure release valve, something like that. So anyhow, I'm starting to think about, how do we wrap this together for this 2024 action plan, and over to Sandra.
Yes, I hear two aspects, kind of the human library resource versus the peer mentor. And of course, the grad school metaphor works just great for me because that's where I am. I was a peer tutor in the Writing and Research Center, and I really appreciate that model, and go and have peers that I work with to motivate me and keep me focused when I feel isolated in the process. And so I think, yeah, peer mentorship is really valuable. Another thing that I've really appreciated in the transformative studies program I've been in is creative inquiry and creative inquiry practices, because a lot of the time you have this angst and these emotions and this stuff that you want to process, but you don't know where to start. So having something to do with your hands, whether it's making art, bundling herbs, working on the farm, it can be, but to be sitting in a circle and having an activity to do together, a creative project. And in the process of creating in that sort of group context, I think we can process individually and make some, process through each other in that learning network. So I'm not articulating it really clearly, but I see some sort of creative inquiry, group processing possibilities that I'd be interested in helping out with or participating in. And then, so I think I'm not sure exactly what your expectations are for the weekend, but if it's just to put those ideas out there and see if they're well received, if that's something people are interested in terms of what form should that take for your 2024 projects, what would be realistic goal for this year to hold X, Y, Z events or activities or set up a resource.
Yeah, that's exactly, yeah, that's the plan is Saturday morning, we get to say, we met and we're thinking this is kind of what we're focusing on. Saturday afternoon, we all have a conversation then about what are the links and, what's reasonable. And then Sunday morning, or, when we decide to meet the next time, is actually like hammering out, okay, so in the next 3 months, what are we going to take on? Like, what are we going to really focus on? So yeah, that's
where to start.
Exactly.
So,
and that's,
Ronnie?
and it's applying the aim, act, reflect, and figure it out as we go. So yeah, over to you, Ronnie.
So over to you, Ronnie.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking of like so much of this we've already figured it out. And I'm just reminding us of that, with the Lifeboat Network and the Lifeboat Mentors, it's designed to be scalable. So the more mentors we have, the more navigation sessions there will be, the more, people can offer whatever kinds of spaces they want to offer. And so it's thinking about it more like if we're bringing people through the pipeline of like you contact, you get a one-on-one, you get invited to a navigation session, you do a few of those, you can start to facilitate them. Then we're spreading out the work, and we as in the faculty or whoever, we don't have to, oh, well, let's schedule another one and another one and another. It's like, no, these people over here, they're doing one on these days, and that person's doing one on that day. So it's really like it creates, ideally, there's an abundance of offerings, and we're just kind of letting people know, what's what and when things are happening. So I agree, it's kind of like where are we now? And how can we lean into the process that we've already designed? I think we've already identified which parts seem really key. The relationality, talking to people, inviting them. There's a group of people from Earth Regenerators who've been coming to navigation sessions now for months, and they love it and they rave about it. Okay, great. Would they be willing to actually start facilitating and offering them for more people on a regular basis? Um, and yeah, so I feel like it's a lot of leaning into the process and
I have a
yeah.
question. I know we're kind of doing this, go around the circle thing, but what I struggle with, like when you talk about a navigation session, it's like an introduction to this Lifeboat Academy, but to me, it's like some sort of orientation session. And it's like, okay, I went to one, and then now what? And it's like, I don't think of it as something I keep coming back to. And then if it's always the same people when I go there, and I just wonder about like, do you ever have like themes or something like,
Well, the navigation session is you bring your tension. So the navigation sessions are always different. I wonder if you're thinking about a different thing that we've done, like maybe a
We've done
lifeboat
lifeboat
circle.
circles. Yeah, I think you're probably thinking about lifeboat circles.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is has a different function. Yeah. Yeah, the lifeboat circles are meant to be kind of an opportunity for people to get to know each other, to start working together on a lifeboat. Like if they're thinking about possibly working together. And then, yeah, like Ronnie's saying, the navigation sessions are, they're always oftentimes it's similar people show up, but you bring whatever your current challenge is. And so it is, it's always different and often very similar at the same time.
I attended one and April was there, and like I really liked about it that I do get to meet other people. But I did think, oh, okay, is this like sort of like a group counseling session on lifeboat themes?
Well,
But yeah, I didn't know how to make use of it in my life beyond, it's an opportunity to connect with people, but I didn't, yeah,
well,
not sure about integrating it.
This is probably not the right place to have this conversation, because it goes into one of the specific techniques rather, but it's also the navigation session is a sociocracy practice, and there's sort of two forms of it. But there's an underlying technique in it that is portable. And so we can talk about, how that can get integrated or used in a more practical way.
Yeah, I get the
But
skill building that comes through the process. Yeah, that's valuable for sure.
and it's not a
I
problem. I mean, so the thing is, the navigation sessions are not problem solving. They're not meant to be like a project circle, but then there are other tools that are available for that. So it's, different
Right.
tools in the toolkit.
Yeah.
All right, so where were we?
April.
Oh,
April's
right.
turn.
Yeah, I think it would be useful under, our immediate plans to lay out what the tools are. Which we probably have that written down somewhere. And maybe like just a one-pager thing about here's the tools that we've been using in our toolkit. And at some point, and I'm not sure if it's this guild or other guilds that need to do that, but then to look at, to have a review of the tools, what worked well, what didn't work well, and that kind of thing. Which we've done in passing, I think, but we could be a little bit more formal about it, and it's probably a good time if we're bringing more people into the fold to describe the fold a bit more, I guess, maybe. And that's all that I have to say, and I need to go in about 32 seconds. So this will be my last word.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess I'll keep passing around over to you, Sandra. Does it feel like we've got what we need?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I like the idea of just identifying the tools that are available for yeah, outsiders or new people. Like for me, I'm half in, half out. But nice to see you all, and nice to see you, April. And I wasn't at the one yesterday, so I will get access to this, or I'll just wait till the weekend.
No, you can get access. I just didn't post them to YouTube last night. They're downloaded, and so you can get, yep, it'll be posted within the half an hour.
Okay. Well, I guess that's good for me. Thank you.
Ronnie, anything to add?
I'm good. I think this was great. Really good use of time and good ideas and focused and expansive at the same time. So good. We like good paradoxes.
Yep. Cool. Awesome. Well, good night, everyone. And I will endeavor to post multiple videos we have 4 guild meetings to post. So that's exciting.
Awesome.
And see you all this weekend.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.